A look ahead to a big Ohio political race for an important congressional seat. Will the big, beautiful bill get passed? And violence continues in Los Angeles. Here we go on a Wednesday.
It's a Scott Sands Show.
Hey there, how y'all doing? It's episode 2574 of the Scott Sands Show podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast. Leave some comments on whatever platform you're choosing to watch or listen. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, YouTube. I'll stream it on Facebook. Parts of it are on X at Scott Sands Media. Now also streaming on Rumble. Be sure to subscribe. Scott Sands Show podcast brought to you in part by Americans for Prosperity, Ohio. You can learn more at BuckeyeBlueprint.com. Donovan O'Neil from Americans for Prosperity, Ohio will join me from D.C. later in this segment. Lots of stuff happening today. And by the way, I will be back on the radio on Super Talk Mississippi Friday morning, 7 to 10 Eastern Time. It's always an honor to be asked to fill in for Richard Cross and Gerard and the guys at Super Talk Mississippi, so I hope you'll tune in. You can stream that everywhere, audio and video, the app, or online at supertalk.fm. CPI numbers out this morning. Inflation is back on the rise, although at a slower pace than expected. The CPI numbers for May rose to 2.4%, which was below expectations of 2.5%. The market has been choppy most of the day after an initial bump. Core CPI inflation, 2.8%, which was, again, below expectations of 2.9%. And for the first time since January 2025, headline CPI inflation is back on the rise. The odds of the Fed cutting rates next week are now down to zero. However, that's not stopping the president from calling for a rate decrease, saying that the Fed should lower 1 full point, would pay much less interest on debt coming due. It's so important, and he's right about that. At this point, many market observers are expecting 2 rate cuts this year, just not next week. As we look at the core, the CPI numbers of 2.4%, unfortunately, inflation is higher, and many of the basic necessities that we all pay for every day, utility gas inflation up 15%, car insurance inflation up 7%, meat and eggs inflation plus 6%, car repairs up 5%, electricity inflation up 4.5%, homeowner inflation up 4%, rent inflation up nearly 4% as well, and food away from home up almost 4%. Hospital services inflation up 3.6%. So even as the overall inflation rate has dropped to numbers that we haven't seen in years, actually, prices for many necessities are still rising rapidly, and I think we're all sick of inflation. We'll continue to watch that as we get new numbers coming in. Thanks to some of my other partners here on the podcast, of course, Tim and Mia at Rixa Health. Be sure to subscribe to their podcast, Health Without the System. It's available online, rixahealth.com. If you want to learn how I went on this medication-assisted weight loss journey and dropped 100 pounds. I'm finally starting to get past a plateau a little bit, too. In fact, I've got a job interview next week, and I went to look at a new suit because everything else that I own, I am swimming in. I've lost like 10 inches around my waist, maybe even as much as 12. But I went to measure my neck. That's down more than 1.5 inches. And my coat size is also down, which is why I look like David Byrne in Talking Heads wearing any of the suits that I own. But man, it's expensive to lose weight. You got to buy a whole new wardrobe. And I'm not sure what I'll do without an income coming in to buy clothes. So I need a job. Find me on LinkedIn, by the way. Also, thanks to Jamie and Mike, 4guysonaroof.com. It's summer. Storms could be approaching at any time. If you got a leak, if you need a repair, or if you need a new roof completely installed, they are Owens Corning Platinum Preferred Installers. They can get your roof done, sometimes in as little as 1 day, and get an estimate back to you same day. Go to 4guysonaroof.com. Also, thanks to Josh Wege at Farnsworth Cocktail Bar. If you I don't know if I can do it this way, but if you subscribe to the podcast, I'm going to pick somebody at random this week to win a $50 gift card to Farnsworth Cocktail Bar in Waterville. Subscribe to the podcast, leave a comment, let me know that you subscribed, because I don't know if I can see my subscribers' names or emails on Spotify and Rumble. I don't know if it will list the names of everybody who subscribes. So when you subscribe, leave a comment for me on X or Facebook, and I'll pick somebody at random to win a $50 gift card to Farnsworth Cocktail Bar as a thank you for listening to this podcast and continuing to give me a platform. Violence continues in Los Angeles. A curfew currently in place in parts of downtown LA. Police saying they have begun arresting dozens of protesters as of last night. Scattered demonstrations have also begun to pop up in multiple cities across America, and Texas has now deployed the National Guard in response. Some of the latest developments: the curfew is in place. It applies from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Pacific time in Los Angeles. Mayor Karen Bass says it could be in effect for several days. Now, the curfew only covers an area of about 1 square mile, which impacts fewer than 100,000 of the 4 million residents in Los Angeles. The LAPD said last night it had begun to make mass arrests, with dozens detained for failing to disperse in an unlawful assembly. At least 378 people arrested last night and over the last 4 days. In Texas, as I mentioned, members of the National Guard will be deployed to various locations in the state ahead of planned protests this week. Governor Greg Abbott said yesterday that the demonstrations, as part of what they're calling a No Kings protest in San Antonio this Saturday, other protests against ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the Trump administration spreading to other major cities like New York, Chicago, Seattle, Denver, San Francisco, Atlanta, and more. The protests come as ICE races to meet the White House's immigration arrest quotas, and the ongoing debate between President Trump and California Governor Gavin Newsom coming to a head really last night. The governor warned in an address to Californians that Trump was pushing indiscriminate mass deportations, risking public safety by deploying the National Guard, and warning democracy was under attack. Same Democrat playbook that we hear every time they disagree with this president. Take him to court or riot in the street seems to be the Democrats' playbook. Come to violence or take it to court. The two also disputed details of an alleged phone call, with Trump claiming he had called Gavin Newsom on Monday, which the governor denied. He said they last spoke on Friday. President Trump shared the receipts showing a screenshot from his iPhone. It was weird it was a 16-minute phone call. All of these protests, as you know, began last Friday over ICE raids that detained dozens of people, including at their workplaces. Yesterday, Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, said she had not received any reports of further ICE raids happening that day, but local police and officials say they are being kept in the dark and not being notified before raids occur, which frankly only makes sense because Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have shown a propensity to warn criminal illegals that they're going to be arrested. I had this conversation with Kim Iverson on her show last night. She asked me to be a guest on the Kim Iverson show, which you can find on Rumble and all of the platforms. I've known Kim forever. It was a lot of fun to sit in and talk about the big, beautiful bill and some of the other issues of the day with her on her show. Again, the Kim Iverson show. We talked about deploying the National Guard into these cities. And this weekend, the big military parade in D.C. on Trump's birthday to honor the birthday of the U.S. Army, and the perceptions that this kind of display of our military might send around the world, but also to the people of some of these cities. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Leave a comment on Facebook there for me. As you know, throughout Northwest Ohio and Toledo, and really every city in this country, there is a major infrastructure problem and a lot of potholes everywhere. If you drive over the same pothole every time you're going home, you might start to shout, "Please, somebody fill my hole." And if you live in this town, they are on it. A town in Pennsylvania called Millersburg launched a pothole fixing program called Fill My Hole. And if you're wondering if they're aware of what they're suggesting with that name, it seems like they are. In their announcement, they say their Fill My Hole program makes it easy for residents to report potholes electronically so they can be taken care of. And they added this quote, all holes, no waiting. Although they also note, quote, some holes may require a little more TLC, but rest assured you'll be provided with a reason if we're unable to fill it ourselves. The statement goes on to say, pleased with the way our crew handled your hole? We want to hear about it. Use the contact us on our website for all questions and compliments. Somebody on Facebook asked, if we want to fill our own holes, is that okay? Or does it need to be filled by professional hole fillers? They responded, best leave it to the professionals. And somebody else said, can you fill deep holes? And do they clean dirty holes before they fill them? And the city of Millersburg, Pennsylvania responded, holes are cleaned first. Debris may prevent adhesion of the filling. Deep holes are no problem. It's good to know. Mayor Kapskavich, counting on you to come in with a Fill My Hole campaign here in Toledo, too. If you polled Americans on which president had the best hair, you may think Donald Trump would come dead last, but he did not. Donald Trump beat the receding hairlines of John Tyler, Gerald Ford, William McKinley. But when it comes to the best hair in presidential history, some of the names on the list in the top 15 included Barack Obama. Bill Clinton was at number 12. Obama was at 15. Richard Nixon in the top 10. Some obscure names. You may have to pull out the history book or go to Wikipedia to look up James Monroe or Ulysses S. Grant at number 6. George W. Bush at 7. And the top 5 of best presidential hair. Franklin Pierce, again, consult your Wikipedia. Ronald Reagan, deservingly at 4. Abraham Lincoln at 3. Benjamin Harrison at 2. And the best presidential hair, John F. Kennedy. But Donald Trump was not dead last. I don't know if I'm shocked or not, but he did beat out some of the other presidents for best presidential hair. As I mentioned, Donovan O'Neil will join me in a minute from Americans for Prosperity. But first, we're joined by former state house member and current congressional candidate in Ohio's 13th, Kevin Coughlin. Kevin, it's always great to see you again.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
I meant to grab a Toledo Rockets shirt because I know you're a BGSU guy, right. But I forgot about it, and it got time to record the podcast, and I didn't have a chance to go change real fast.
Well, there's always next time.
So you got to be excited as a Falcon about Eddie George.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool to have somebody of national importance. You know, Bowling Green, like a lot of MAC schools, has been a stop on the way to a lot of great coaches over time. And we'll see how he does. So far, so good. The culture that he's bringing to campus sounds like it's a very positive one.
Seems to really have energized the fan base and the team, obviously. And he seems like a super nice guy. I can't speak to his coaching experience, but I ran into him, had a cigar with him a few weeks ago. Seems like a super nice guy. And I think it's going to be really good for the MAC as a conference and certainly for BG.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Looking forward to the season.
So we didn't have you on to talk football, although I would certainly prefer to talk football than politics most days. You have announced it's officially a redo of the last congressional campaign. You're running against Amelia Sykes. You want to represent Ohio in Congress, which would be a great thing for that district.
Yeah. We had a very close race last time, one of the toughest districts in the country, and tracked very closely to President Trump, who only lost it by about 500 votes. So this district is moving red, ripe to turn over. And, our current Congresswoman is continuing to do, actually doubling down on some of the things that she was doing in the past with embracing radical liberal policies, opposing secure borders, opposing our police, voting against the tax cuts and really working to try to make government larger and bigger and everything more costly for all of us. So nothing's changed there.
That district really was razor thin. Has any redistricting changes benefited you in that particular district? I know there's a lot of talk about Ohio's 9th with Marcy Kaptur and how she may have an even tougher race, especially if there's no libertarian opposition. And I think there are some good candidates challenging her this time. Will you benefit from any of the changes to redistricting?
It sounds like we may. I think Ohio is probably going to be the only state in the country where Republicans are drawing congressional maps this year. So the interest in DC, I think, is going to be very heavily weighted on Ohio to try to make sure that we keep the House. It's a razor thin majority there, as you know. And there's a couple districts here that you just mentioned, mine and the one in Toledo that are on the cusp. And I would not be surprised to see a little help coming our way. Like all championship teams, you make adjustments at halftime and you come out and you win. And we're making we're making the adjustments on our campaign that I can control. And that is, tactics, fundraising, and so forth, messaging. And we're making those adjustments. The redistricting side, I can't control, but all indication is that we're probably going to see some slight changes to the maps.
When there's a tough race like this, it's really a double-edged sword because the NRCC is going to be pouring a lot of money in. They want to increase the margin in the House and in the Senate, but obviously Democrats want to maintain control of the seat as well.
Sure. Yeah. The Democrats aren't going to go away. They've got $15 million that'll come out of the sky from around the country to try to defend this seat as they did this past time. But, we think we're going to be sharper. We think we've got a better shot to win this time. I'm not a sadist. I'm not running for the heck of it. I'm back on the horse because I think we can win.
It's a grueling,
and you've seen already that Washington is targeting these districts. You probably had ads running since April 1st or so up there. The same thing's happening here from House Republicans. Really going at the radical records of Marcy Kaptur and Amelia Sykes.
It's interesting. I've been doing a lot of fill-in for a radio network in Mississippi, Super Talk Mississippi. And I think right now, I think this was very obvious in a couple of the mayoral races in Mississippi last week. Democrats are looking for a story and for a win and for a victory literally anywhere to build a momentum story going into the midterms. And hopefully the Democrats, I think, are hopeful that they can have some wins to go into the presidential cycle. Stacey Abrams coming into Gulfport, Mississippi, and Democrat money on a relatively minor mayoral race, second largest city in the state, but Democrats poured a lot of money and a lot of time to try to get a W just in that mayoral race.
Yeah, Stacey Abrams, there's a winner. Send her out more.
Yeah, if you want to win, call in Stacey Abrams. That seems like a good strategy.
The Democrats have just lost it completely around the country. They have no message. They have no leader. They're casting about trying to find out what lane they can come out. They're wringing their hands and figuring out if they need to go back and try to get the blue collar votes back, or if they need to double down with their progressive base. Seems like they're doing the latter. What they're doing right now in their response to political violence, attacking our police, looting, criminal activity on our streets, impeding federal agents from doing their job to secure the border and deport people who shouldn't be here, is really unbelievable. And it just shows how far they have completely lost their way.
Well, since you brought that up, let's talk about some of the headlines that I think will play a factor going into the election. And obviously a lot can happen in the next year and a half between now and election day for you. But this is not a good look for Democrats to be defending criminal illegals, drug traffickers, human traffickers, gang members, going as far as to go to foreign countries to try to bring these gang members back to the United States and letting their streets literally, in the case of Los Angeles, burn to the ground. And we're seeing this violence spread to other cities like Chicago and New York. And I would expect that to grow over the weekend as well.
Right. And look, this was allowed to happen back in 2020 and 2021, and when people took to the streets. And I think that the posture is we're not going to allow it to happen this time. But let's just put it in perspective. The Democrats opened up the floodgates to our borders and welcomed millions of illegal immigrants into our country. They gave them all kinds of public services, healthcare, housing. They gave them debit cards and cell phones and turned them loose in our country. And they created all kinds of problems, which we've talked about in the past. Now they fought efforts to stop that, to secure the border. They voted time and time again against securing the border, giving Border Patrol more support and directing them to do their jobs. Now that they're here, they're fighting the efforts to try to remove them. And they're actually, taking positions against law enforcement who are trying to do their job and send people back to their countries who shouldn't be here, particularly those who have committed crimes. And it's I don't understand the strategy. I'm not going to give them advice, but it seems to be an untenable position.
It's an indefensible position, in my opinion. And I hope that we see calm and peace return to the streets of Los Angeles. I believe in the First Amendment. But when you start burning down streets and burning down those poor Waymo cars and
Right.
and looting stores in a city, you got to get help. And Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, have said, hey, we don't need help. We want to let it burn for a while.
Right. It's there. We're for peaceful demonstration. We're for the free speech and the expression of your political thoughts. But you're right. When it turns violent, when it turns to looting, when it turns to damaging property, when it turns to harming people, impeding law enforcement from doing their job in a violent way, then it goes from demonstration and protest to something far more sinister. And I really can't stand it when I hear the media talking about that there's clash with demonstrators, peaceful demonstrators. Come on, we're all seeing this
We can
happen
see the video
in real
We're not
time with our
blind.
own eyes.
Does it work for or against Republicans and Donald Trump to send troops into an American city? Obviously, I think it enhances his stance for law and order, but we are sending troops into a U.S. city at the same time that we're going to have this big military parade this weekend.
Right, right, and I think it's important to note what they're being used for. They're being used to protect federal sites, federal buildings, to protect law enforcement while they're doing their jobs. Border Patrol, ICE, is out there doing the actual raids and seizures. And these people that are being sent for support for their security to do that and create an environment where we don't have cities burning to the ground like we did a few years ago.
We're talking to Kevin Coughlin. He's running for U.S. Congress in Ohio's 13th. This is the big issue that they're working on in D.C. this week still. It's now in the hands of the Senate. It's the big, beautiful bill. I've got mixed emotions about this. There are so many things in the bill that we need to pass, most importantly, making the Trump tax cuts permanent. More things like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, some of the other elements of the big, beautiful bill. But I think Elon Musk had a point about spending, which, how Congress works. You can't cut everything across the board in this reconciliation package. What are your thoughts on the big, beautiful bill? Do the benefits outweigh the cons?
Yeah, I think you have to take the win where you can get it. It's not everything that you want. It's not the win that everyone wants, but it is a win. The reconciliation package only covers a portion of federal spending we're talking about. There's going to be another reconciliation package probably before the end of the year covering other things. So, within this package, you've got almost a $2 trillion cut in annual spending, which hasn't been done in a very, very long time. And then you've got, of course, the preservation of the tax cuts from 2017. And as you just mentioned, some additional tax relief in there, which is going to grow the economy. At my core, I'm a pro-growth political leader. I want people to be able to keep more money in their pocket, whether they're individuals or businesses, so that they can save, so they can invest, so that they can put it back into wages, into hiring, into expansion. And that is what grows our economy. So when you have a combination of tax cuts plus spending cuts, I understand what that does long term, but it's going to grow the economy and mean more revenue down the road. And then there'll be another opportunity to get another win down the road. So I would say to my friends in DC, take the win, and move on. And really, the alternative is, if you're voting no on this bill, you are voting for the largest tax increase in the history of our country to happen. And I think that's far worse than anything else that we may have to hold our nose on in the rest of the bill.
We're seeing some cuts in the rescissions package, and hopefully Congress will have the spine to make even deeper cuts when the 12 appropriations bills come up. I'm not crazy about raising the debt ceiling and things like that, but it also gets that conversation off the table because it comes up every 90 days or more frequently. And at the end, the debt ceiling always gets raised anyway, because to do otherwise would be disastrous.
That's right. And I think that, look, Congress responds to what the people are telling them to do and what they think they can, I don't want to say get away with, but what they can do.
Well, in many cases,
I
yes.
think there's an argument to make that the American public is not as concerned about long-term debt of our country as a lot of us are. A lot of people who are in office, a lot of people who are like you, who are watching this very closely, and they will. There'll be a day where they will have to be. But for now, they've kind of given Congress a pass on this, and that's why it's not as big a priority as it's been over the last several years.
Tell me about the portrait and the background there. Tell me about TR.
It's a guy from Atlanta who does historical figures, bourbon, horse racing, and Southern University campuses. That's
Okay,
his
that's
wheelhouse.
a wide range.
TR is an interesting guy
things.
because there's things to learn from him, and there's lessons to take away of what not to do. But I think one of the things to take away from him is that action really is important, and that not taking action is inexcusable. So sometimes you got to throw some things up against the wall and see how they work.
Unfortunately,
And I think what you see with President Trump.
we
Sorry.
saw on the border. Unfortunately, not taking action sometimes is the action itself, as we saw with Biden's failure to secure our border.
That's right. And I'll kind of bring this to modern day with President Trump. One of the things that we see from him this year, and one of the observations I've had, is that he is willing to try some things that are maybe unconventional or haven't been done before and see how they work out. And what's very important is that when they don't work out the way he wants, or they're having an unintended consequence, we've seen that he has got the ability to change course and to go in a different direction. That means we've got a president who lives in reality and is a practical thinker. And I think that's good. That's a lot like what this guy did.
So what would be your other priorities for the people of Ohio and your district were you to win? Obviously, we've got to make some spending cuts. We've got to make sure that taxes are cut. What would be some of your other priorities in office?
I continue to be concerned about the fact that we have 400 plus federal agencies making laws every single day with virtually no oversight from the United States Congress. They are passing rules and regulations that have the force of law, and Congress doesn't have any say before they take effect. That's unlike almost every state legislature in the country. It is one of the reasons why our government has grown so large in scope and in size and in power. And it's because Congress is lazy. Over the last 50 years, they have slowly given that power up to the agencies and said, you guys, we're going to farm it out and you take care of it. We don't want to deal with it. And we have this big bloated government that we have today. So I'd like to figure out within congressional reform how to rein that in, how to put the people back in charge of this process. That's a big one for me. The second is just, economic growth. I mean, Northeast Ohio, where I'm from, is always kind of the last to get support. You feel that in Northwest Ohio as well, I know. But as I mentioned before, I am for policies that promote growth. To me, that's low taxes, less regulation, a legal environment that provides stability, and a government that kind of gets out of the way and lets. I believe that the entrepreneurial spirit of our country and the innovation that we have here is one of the things that makes us a superpower, and so we need to enhance that and grow that.
How can people learn more about you? Find you online?
We're at kevincoughlin.com. Pretty easy website, and of course, we're on all the social media platforms, but a good place to start is our website, kevincoughlin.com.
I haven't seen you doing any TikTok dances online.
I'm not on TikTok. I'm drawing the line there. Instagram, Facebook, and X.
It's great to see you. I'm sure we'll talk soon and many times between now and the election.
Thank you, Scott. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, so let's continue our conversation about the big, beautiful bill. And Donovan O'Neil, the state director of Americans for Prosperity in Ohio, will join me from D.C. in just a second. Here's the latest today. The House is expected to okay 20 specific changes to the big, beautiful bill. That's about 3 weeks after the House passed their large tax and budget plan and sent it to the Senate. These are 4 pages of legislative corrections tucked inside of a procedural resolution on a different bill, and its approval should send the revised plan to the Senate for further action. So what's being amended? None of the changes released last night have anything to do with the major issues in the reconciliation bill, like the state and local tax, the SALT deduction, Medicaid cuts, or any of the controversial provisions. These changes were also evidently not related to the Byrd Rule review being done by the Senate parliamentarian, but the provisions taken out of the bill violated the original reconciliation instructions, meaning that the bill would have been subject to a Senate filibuster, or what's known as a fatal error. Two of the items dropped from the bill involved extra money for the Pentagon. One plan funded $2 billion to enhance military intelligence programs, and the other spent $62 million on submarines. Not quite sure why they were taken out, but they're out, and that avoids the fatal error that could potentially, in the Senate, kill the big, beautiful bill. Another provision dropped had sought to reverse a Bureau of Land Management decision to prevent mining on certain federal lands in Minnesota. One more item struck from the bill dealt with penalties on COVID-related employee retention credits. So those changes were unveiled as Republicans continued to wrestle with the big, beautiful bill. But John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, said, "We're making great progress on the reconciliation bill, but there's no timeline on when Senate floor debate will begin. The target is the last week of June, and of course, they hope to get this on the president's desk by the 4th of July. Something to note, and this is important as we talk about all of the spending cuts that should be made, either through rescission packages or when the appropriations bills come due, at the same time that some Republicans, many of us, are demanding deep cuts to spending. A key House committee is poised to approve 528 local projects championed by lawmakers in both parties for $1.1 billion in earmarks. More than $1 billion in earmarks have been approved. They were tucked into the first two government funding bills for next year in the House Appropriations Committees. After budget earmarks were dropped last year, it's clear there's still a strong desire by both parties to funnel money back home. It's part of what they do. Here's what I brought home for you. This is why I should stay in Congress. The subcommittee received nearly 8,000 member requests for earmarks. 8,000 earmark requests. There are 509 bipartisan earmarks worth $643 million. Most of these that I can tell you about now, 19 local projects included in a bill for military construction. I didn't see any directly in our area, but bases in Alabama at Fort Bragg and Key West, Fort Knox, the Naval Air Station Fort Worth in Texas, a couple of installations in Jacksonville. Guam got $50 million for a defense-related road project. The Guam delegate did get $50 million, but Democrats got zero. So look, let me set this clear too. You may not enjoy the idea of these earmarks, and you might recoil at the idea of funding local projects with the debt as high as it is, deficits as high as they are. But congressional funding earmarks actually have some merit, and if you want to know why, if you cut out the earmarks, this money that's allocated, that's appropriated, still gets spent. But instead of those local projects, the funding goes to a federal agency, which then funds, you guessed it, local projects. Like I've said before, you never want to see how the sausage in D.C. is actually made. He's there right now. Donovan O'Neil is State Director of Americans for Prosperity, Ohio. Donovan, nice to see you.
Scott, pleasure to be with you. Coming to you live from AFP's Freedom Embassy in Washington, D.C.
I see you all fancy with your suit and stuff.
I don't like it. I don't want to be doing it, Scott. I was happy to take the tie off to join you, but and I hopefully I won't put it back on for the rest of the day.
You've had a bunch of meetings on the Hill talking about the big, beautiful bill and some of our priorities to give us more of our money back, or let us keep more of our money when the big, beautiful bill passes and the Trump tax cuts are extended. But let's talk about D.C. first. I love that town. I would not know. I don't know if I would want to live there, but man, I love to visit D.C. So many historic monuments and museums, great restaurants. Have you been to Shelley's Back Room yet?
Well, I made the mistake of doing Shelley's on night one of we're here for 4 days, and it's a great place. Awesome. Lots of good times with friends. But yeah, you don't want to start night one off at the Shelley's Backroom Cigar Bar.
You know what I love about that place is I go to DC a couple of times a year, and there is a bartender there that remembers me every time I come in. And literally it's like twice a year. That is the mark of great service, in my opinion.
That's phenomenal. Well, we started, I don't know if you've ever been to Hamilton Restaurant, just down the
Now,
way
I
from
don't
here.
think I've been to Hamilton.
Hamilton's great. Next time you're there, get dinner at Hamilton, then go over to Shelley's to end the night. It's a good time.
So there's a restaurant, and I always have to look it up because I go there every year, and I can never remember the name. It's like Founders and Merchants, or Farmers and Tables or something. But
Okay.
for dessert, they make homemade donuts right there in front of you.
Well, we're gonna have to find that out when we get off the air here, and get me the details. I'm gonna get it before I leave town.
I'll look it up for you and send it to you. It's and you know, I've been trying to lose weight, so donuts aren't exactly part of my diet plan, but I would make the exception for the homemade fresh donuts made right there in front of you.
Like I tell my kids, I'm working the opposite. I'm working to put pounds on right now. So donuts are right in my diet category these days.
You've had quite a few meetings on the Hill. I've been following you on X and on social media. You've met with many representatives from the state of Ohio, both from Congress, both from the House and from the Senate. What are their thoughts on the big, beautiful bill? Is this thing going to get done by July 4th?
Yeah, well, actually, it's not just Ohio here on Capitol Hill this week. It's our colleagues from all across the country. So we, I think, had 140 meetings. I think we met with 48 Senate offices. Over half of those had members involved. And so AFP across the country is descended on Capitol Hill as part of our 2025 Capitol Conference that we do. And it provides us the opportunity to really zero in on top federal priorities, which for us, for those of your listeners who've been following what we've been working on this year, right? It's been working to protect prosperity, make the one big, beautiful bill, get that signed into law. And good, positive meetings in the House, thanking those folks for getting that vote done. And then some really constructive dialogue in the Senate to sort of figure out how do we get that more deliberative body across the finish line and send this bill to the president's desk, maybe even, Scott, by the 4th of July.
So I think I probably know the answer to this question. Did any Democrat members of Congress meet with Americans for Prosperity?
I don't know that Marcy Kaptur wants to really sit down and talk with us. We've been pretty critical of her policy positions. We'll meet with anybody, but our focus really, right, and this is the way these things work, the majority party is the one that sets the agenda and drives on this stuff, right? And so having a new Republican majority in the Senate, that's where a lot of our energy needed to be spent, because those are the folks who are going to be the ultimate decision makers to get this reconciliation package accomplished.
And really, it's so important. There are certainly flaws when a bill is as big as it is. As Elon Musk said, it can't be big and beautiful, but we can address some of the spending cuts and the deficit and debt in future legislation. But most importantly, we've got to get this done to make the Trump tax cuts permanent, because I don't think there is anyone who thinks it's a good time to raise taxes on Americans. And this would be an historic tax increase if this big, beautiful bill fails.
$4.5 trillion in tax hikes, Scott. If this bill fails to get across the finish line, and this sort of aligns, what you're pointing out there actually aligns with some polling we brought with us to the Hill. I think I shared it with you, but the polling that we had released June 9th, so just 2 days ago, pointed out sort of what folks understand, right? And that Americans do not want to see their taxes go up. They do understand 7 in 10 Americans agree with this general statement that Washington has a spending and debt problem that we need to get under control, but we also shouldn't allow the potential of Americans experience one of the largest tax hikes in American history while trying to solve that debt problem. And so Americans understand it. I think members in Congress, at least many of the Ohio delegation, understand it. One big beautiful bill is not going to get it all done, but this one big beautiful bill does protect Americans from seeing their tax bills go up on average $1,500 to $2,000 per family of four in this country. We get that done, let Ohioans, Americans keep their hard-earned money, and then do things like the rescissions package that Congress is actually going to be voting on this week, I understand, that actually begins to codify some of the DOGE cuts that Elon Musk and President Trump, and they identified early in the first 100 days of the Trump administration.
You know, it's interesting, the polling data that you sent me, and this is a great way to explain this. And with 70% of voters agreeing with this one statement, it should be clear to the members of Congress. And the statement that they selected, overwhelmingly, Washington has a serious spending problem, and the Senate should push for as many responsible cuts as possible, but our debt crisis will not be solved with one bill. There will be more opportunities to cut spending in the future. The most important thing is to protect Americans from the largest tax increase in history. That's a great way to explain what this is. Flaws and all, blemishes and all, we've got to make sure that our tax cuts are protected and made permanent.
Yeah, and part of how I was describing it to members on the Hill this week has been the House did a good bill, and the Senate's job is to make it even better, right? And what that good bill really is, Scott, is three things. One, locking in the Trump tax cuts, making them permanent. Two, securing our border. That costs money, but it's an important thing for voters and Americans. We want a secure border. If there's one thing government needs to do, Scott, other than pave roads for us, right? It's secure our borders from foreign invasions like we've seen in the southern border.
It's to protect our sovereignty, which has not been done under the Biden administration, and frankly, under several Republican administrations either.
That's right. And you've got to get those resources where they belong, and that's in the Border Patrol and Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, right? And then finally, that third thing is undoing the Bidenomics, right? The so-called Inflation Reduction Act. That was the scheme Congress came up with, Joe Biden came up with, Kamala Harris came up with, where the government needs to print and spend more money to undo the disastrous effects that come with printing and spending a lot of money already. So it undoes that. All in all, right, this is the bill that accomplishes the president and Republican majority's promises they made back in November. It resolves a lot of issues like that. And then what we've got to do is through rescissions packages and a formal budget process and additional work, begin to bring that big spending number down that Washington has found itself in over decades and decades of mismanagement.
They'll have the opportunity to do that with future rescissions packages and in the 12 appropriations bills, which will be up for debate as soon as the big, beautiful bill passes. It's interesting you talk about printing money because following the CPI numbers that came out earlier today, the market seems to now be baking in 2 rate cuts in 2025, and that's been a number that's fluctuated. There was speculation there would be no rate cuts at all this year, but now it seems like the market believes there will be 2 rate cuts in 2025, which is also an important part of improving our economy and moving it forward.
Well, and I think some of that, right, really comes down to what we're seeing right now is a more hands-on management of our government, right? You've got a president who is active
Showing up, awake.
Process. He's alive and not sleeping 16, 18 hours a day. And then you have a Congress, right, that's focused on prosperity and growth, right? Not wokeism, DEI, and all the silliness, right? They're focused on the top line issues that voters consistently say are their number 1, 2, and 3. It's unleashing energy abundance, it's securing our borders, and it's ensuring that people get to keep more of their hard-earned money, like making the Trump tax cuts permanent. That's what this Congress, Speaker Mike Johnson's focused on. It's what the new Republican majority in the Senate, thanks to Senator Husted and Senator Bernie Moreno representing Ohio, they are focused on, and we're getting that work done. It never is as beautiful as you want it to be, right? But the work is getting done, and there's good people running this country right now.
We're talking to Donovan O'Neil, State Director for Ohio for Americans for Prosperity. He's in D.C. right now fighting for us. You mentioned the energy production in America. I think I paid $2.90 for gas here in Ohio just yesterday, day before, which is one of the lowest prices I've paid in quite some time. The more we're able to increase domestic energy production, the lower that number is going to go. And I think that's another popular issue with American voters in general. I think more Americans want to see us increase the permitting process and produce more oil, gas, and critical minerals domestically to lower those costs for us all.
Yeah, there's really 2 things that the federal government, we've kind of dialed in on that the federal government can do in terms of reform to speed up and unleash energy abundance. One is on the permitting process, right? People who are going to make investments in energy generation or energy extraction of resources need to have the confidence that when they put that start that process up, they know that they're going to get an answer. A lot of times it just goes into the black hole of bureaucracy and nothing ever happens. The second part is the environmental reviews, right? Nobody wants to see the waterways polluted or the grounds damaged, right? Nobody does. But we also shouldn't allow bureaucrats to grind our energy production, jobs, opportunity, prosperity to a halt through these environmental review processes, right? And so speeding those up, getting to where we actually are focused on public health, public safety, rather than preferred political outcomes. And those aren't just ideas that are 50-50 blue and red. issues. 64% of voters in both of those categories on this new polling we just released this week on the Hill say those are the things they want to see happen. Faster permitting, more efficient permitting, and faster environmental reviews so we can get this energy online. And people, this is the kind of stuff that helps work. It helps everybody, right? But most importantly, working class, fixed income individuals. When gas prices go up, you don't just magically get more money to pay for it. When utility bills go up, you don't get magically more money to pay for it. And so bringing those costs down, making government more efficient, is a critical component to unleashing prosperity in this country.
So, Donovan, as debate begins in the Senate over the big, beautiful bill and whatever changes the Senate makes to it before sending it back to the House, we're going to see a lot of fear-mongering from Democrats over the proposed changes to Medicaid. Overwhelmingly, Americans want to protect and prioritize care for seniors and low-income families, I believe, but we also know that there's a crap ton of waste, fraud, and abuse within those programs that needs to be eliminated at the same time.
In every one of the meetings we had this week, Scott, Senators Husted, Moreno, Kerry, Dave Taylor, met with several other members. Medicaid came up in every one of those conversations. And I can tell you, those folks understand the importance of Medicaid and what it means to so many Ohioans, right? But the problem is, and we all see this, Democrats see it too, they just won't say it, right? They see it too. The program is not being run very well. We want the Medicaid resources should be going to folks who have a need. What we've got right now, right, are folks who are working age, able-bodied individuals pulling from the system. That costs money that doesn't get to go to other things like teacher pay, education opportunity, tax cuts, what have you. And if we don't have that, if we don't fix that system, if we don't ensure that that system is efficient in delivering the resources to the people who need it the most, it's there for no one. And that's the important thing here, right? And this is the thing that the Republicans are focused on in both Columbus and DC, for the matter of fact, when it comes to Medicaid, is ensuring that we're screening enrollees to weed out the folks who are ineligible, specifically illegal immigrants, but also ensuring that we are focusing these resources, these limited resources that exist, right, to the folks who need it the most: low-income families, aged individuals, senior citizens, folks like that.
You know, when a program like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, et cetera, becomes so big and so massive, they're ripe for fraud and abuse. And there have been no efforts through past administrations, Republican and Democrat, to go through the system. It's the third rail of politics, but it needs to be addressed before it's no longer available at all.
Well, yeah, I think anytime you have a program, right, over time, like anything, you got to do some maintenance, you got to do some tidying up, and you got to remember how to get back to the core purpose for why this program existed, right? It's why it's reform, right? And that's what Republicans in Washington are talking about right now. I don't know, did you have Representative Mike DeVille on your show yet, talking about what he's uncovered?
I have not, no.
Well, one of the things he's uncovered, I'd encourage you to get him on your show. He's dialed in on some issues. $6 billion in potential fraud, waste, and abuse in the Ohio Department of Medicaid over the last few years. LexisNexis did a evaluation of Medicaid enrollees in the state of Ohio in the aged, blind, and disabled, ABD category, and identified, I think it was something like 24% of those individuals are outside of the threshold for qualifying. They're ineligible. In other words, they have too much money, liquid assets. In fact, 10,000 of those folks have $1 million or more in assets. Medicaid was not designed for millionaires and billionaires.
No.
It was designed for folks who need it the most, right? We don't want grandma living destitute on the street. We don't want people with disabilities trying to figure out how they're going to make ends meet as they seek care. But folks like Representative Mike DeVille are finding that fraud. And when they go, the problem is, though, when they go to the Department of Medicaid and say, hey, can you confirm this? And how are you going to get these folks off the rolls? No. Department of Medicaid does one of these things and says, go talk to the counties. The counties say, go talk to the Department of Medicaid. And they're just going to wait till Mike DeVille gets tired. But if you know anything about Mike DeVille, he's tireless in his advocacy for the taxpayer. And I think he introduced some legislation this week, I think, to begin to get at the root of that problem. So again, we can make sure this safety net exists for the people who need it the most.
You know, I would use the analogy, and as you know, I've dropped like 100 pounds in the last year and a half. You got to go through your closet every once in a while and get rid of clothes that you don't wear or don't fit or don't or out of style, whatever the reason. And nobody wants to get rid of their favorite shirt, but sometimes your wife or girlfriend is going to tell you, get rid of the shirt, or she's going to throw it out when you're not looking. And that's what we need to do with some of these programs and some of the people in these programs.
Well, yeah, and $6 billion. Just put that in perspective, right? It may not mean a lot to a billionaire like you, Scott, right? Who's willing to deal in the stock market every day, but to the state budget, right? That is half of the money we bring in through the state income tax. We bring about $10 billion into the state income tax. $6 billion in waste in the Medicaid program. That's real money that can be directed towards something like the backpack bill, teachers' pay, better roads. We're not saying give it all back to the taxpayer, right? Just use that dang money better if it's going to go to Columbus. And right now, according to what Representative DeVille is identifying, it's not happening, and we need to hold those folks accountable.
You could give some of it back to us as taxpayers, and that would be nice.
That would be great.
But there are other ways to better spend the money that you've got coming in rather than taking more money from us, which is, and notice the transition I'm making here, which is why the move towards a flat tax in Ohio is such a move in the right direction. We're looking at a 2.75% flat tax, which is all but a done deal at this point.
I think when this airs, Ohio Senate will have voted to approve their version of the state budget, which includes a 2.75% flat tax at the end of the biennium. It'll be the second lowest in the country, the lowest in the Midwest, and really position our state, most importantly, over the next decade or so to begin to tick that rate down to a 0% income tax. That's not in this bill, to be clear, but will position us to begin to have those conversations and identify a strategy and pathway to getting to that eventual goal, which is 0% in the state.
And benefits everybody. You and I have talked about how advantageous it would be for the state to have zero income tax, but certainly a 2.75% flat tax is a move in the positive direction.
Yeah, we did a telephone town hall last week with Grover Norquist from Americans for Tax Reform. And he was, he's been the tireless champion of that since Reagan tax cuts, right? He knows it. He's the reason. He's a single driving force behind the movement that's been sweeping this nation over the last few years. But what we're finding, right, is that states that have moved to or are on the pathway to moving to 0% income tax states are the ones seeing the most economic growth, the most economic opportunity. And that's why it's so important. It's 0% is more than just actually the number, although that matters, people keeping their paychecks. It's really sending a message out there that as a state, we believe fundamentally that the money you earn every 40 hours you work, right, every 2 weeks when you get your paycheck is your money, not Columbus's money. And so getting that 0% is more than just saving people some tax dollars. It's about sending a message for what Ohio and Ohioans value. And ideally, that's prosperity and economic opportunity for all.
You can learn all about these programs and the benefits. ProtectProsperity.com and Ohio BuckeyeBlueprint.com has all of the information. It's all great stuff. You're doing important work there. How long are you in D.C.?
Too long, if you ask me, but we've got we wrapped up our Hill visits this morning. We've got a series of programming connecting with our colleagues and sort of North Star on strategy over the summer and fall.
Programs connecting with colleagues. That sounds like a cocktail party to me.
Well, there's a little bit of that as well. Congressional ball games this evening. We're going to go to that. I'm kind of excited to check that out. Congressman Dave Taylor's on the roster from Southern Ohio. Great guy. We met with him the other day, and yeah, it'll be fun. It's always a good time to connect with freedom-loving patriots from across all 50 states.
Can he play ball? Is he going to be an asset?
He's a freshman member. We're going to find out. I haven't read.
He's young, so he can still run the bases.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what these guys can do.
Have fun. I'll text you that restaurant in a little bit. Donovan O'Neil, State Director of Americans for Prosperity here in Ohio. Follow him on X, all the social medias. I'll have links in the podcast as well. Donovan, enjoy the rest of the trip.
Scott, thanks as always for chatting with me.
Just want to wrap things up, and I almost forgot there may be a mending of the fences happening now on X. I don't know if you saw this last night, a late night post from Elon Musk on X, saying that he regretted some of the things that he had said about Donald Trump. Trump has said, but has not commented on Truth Social or on X, but says he appreciates the post from Elon Musk. So it's kind of like that late night call after you get in a fight with your girlfriend trying to apologize. Honey, I screwed up. I'm sorry. Will you take me back? We'll see. We'll see how this proceeds, but a little bit of a conciliatory tone coming from Elon Musk after that firestorm on social media last week. By the way, I want to thank one of the partners of the podcast, Alp Nicotine Pouches. I use these. If you use nicotine pouches, I would encourage you to give these a try. This is their new flavor, Sweet Nectar, which is going to be available for a limited time. I love the chilled mint and the wintergreen. If I can hold it up correctly. Chilled mint, wintergreen, two of my favorites. The Sweet Nectar is good. And they just introduced a new flavor that's not a nicotine pouch. It's a caffeine pouch with 50 milligrams of caffeine called Coffee Break. It's available on their website now. And if you use my link, you'll save 10% on your first purchase of Alp nicotine pouches or the Coffee Break caffeine pouch with 50 milligrams of caffeine. I can't wait to try that. They've got some on their way to me right now to try. I'll let you know how they are next week for a little caffeine boost. Alp nicotine pouches, better time. It's Tucker Carlson's company. Product does contain nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. You must be 21. The caffeine pouches do not contain any tobacco, nor do they contain nicotine. It's all just it's a caffeine product. So I can't wait to try that. Use my link, save 10% on your purchase of Alp nicotine pouches. Remember a couple of weeks ago, the story out of Springfield Township here in Ohio of the police who initiated a traffic stop after learning that the driver, Victoria Page Vidal, had an outstanding warrant. And while placing her under arrest, officers were told there was a raccoon in the car. A raccoon was in the car, and they found the raccoon with a meth pipe. This was the body cam audio of the arrest.
The reason I stopped you is you are suspended with a warrant for your arrest.
I am?
The raccoon has her meth pipe.
As what?
Oh my God.
Her meth pipe. He's playing with the meth pipe right now. Oh, there's no way. He's trying to smoke it.
All right. Thanks.
There's no way. All right. Enough fun and games.
That poor meth-addicted raccoon Chewy is fine. They actually found Chewy the raccoon with two different meth pipes. Story got national attention. We have since heard from the arrestee. What was her name? Victoria Page Vidal. She admitted that she did not have a permit to keep the raccoon as a pet and vowed never to surrender Chewy to wildlife officials. 1 month later, here we are in mid-June. And just so you know, Ohio does allow raccoons to be kept as pets if they're bought from an approved breeder and the owner has a permit. No wild-caught raccoons can be legally kept as a pet. Yesterday, Victoria Page Vidal told Fox 8 News that she bought Chewy online, but she cannot find her bill of sale. She's living in a tent now. She continues to vow that she will not surrender Chewy the raccoon, fearing that Chewy would be euthanized, and none of us want that to happen. Cute little raccoon. The Ohio Department of Natural Resources Division of Wildlife has not yet said what may become of Chewy. Springfield Township Police Chief Jack Simone told Fox 8 that it's his understanding that ODNR is working with her attorneys to determine the raccoon's fate. In the meantime, she has been indicted on felony drug charges, facing 7 total charges, according to Summit County Court, all out of her arrest from May. And during a hearing on Monday, her attorney filed just the customary demand for discovery prior to trial. I think we're all cheering for the best outcome, if not for Victoria, who I hope is able to land on her feet and get off drugs. But we want to see the best, I believe, for Chewy the raccoon. That should just about do it for me today. You can hear me and see me Friday morning, 7 to 10 Eastern time. I'll be filling in again for Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi. Stream it live from anywhere at supertalk.fm. Thanks again to Ohio for Americans for Prosperity, Ohio, BuckeyeBlueprint.com. They're doing great work in D.C. right now to make sure that the Trump tax cuts are made permanent and we don't face the largest tax increase in American history. Thanks to Rixa Health, RixaHealth.com. If you want to start a medication-assisted weight loss journey like I did, see how baggy my 3X shirt is on me now, as I need to size down at least one size. Also, thanks to Jamie and Mike at 4 Guys on a Roof. Get your roof replaced, get a repair that you might need. 4GuysOnARoof.com. They can get your roof installed in as little as 1 day. Of course, thanks to Farnsworth Cocktail Bar. If you subscribe, leave me a comment that you have subscribed to the podcast. I'll draw somebody to win a $50 gift card to Farnsworth Cocktail Bar on Friday. You can go have a cigar at 3rd Street Cigar right down the street. Thanks to Christy and Beth at The Art of Men's Grooming. I've told you about their new men's grooming product line. They've got everything from aftershave balm to candles to shave soap pucks and some amazing fragrances, all made with better ingredients than you can get off the store shelves. The Art of Men's Grooming. Go to their Instagram page or their Facebook page. You can buy online or stop in the Art of Men's Grooming. Make an appointment, get your hair cut like I do from Christy, and buy online from Vigaro or online. They're right off Central. And tonight it's Wednesday as this podcast airs. Downstairs with Commodore Perry, Whiskey Red Saloon. It's line dancing night. Line dancing tonight at Whiskey Red Saloon. Thanks again for watching and listening. Be sure to subscribe everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, YouTube, now on Rumble, streaming on Facebook and X at Scott Sands Media.